In my previous videos, you might have seen me pull up this magic window in which I type in something and something happens. In this case, I opened GitHub. What is this? This is what I call the runner, or if I want it to sound cooler, the terminal, because it kind of does exactly that. You have a input box to type something in, and then depending on what you implemented, something happens. All right, I want to explain how it actually works. The version I have is tested with time and improved massively from the basic version. So first of all, I will go through how it works now and explain why, roughly, and then I'll show the most basic way you can do the same thing. All right, first of all, we create a GUI that's always on top and doesn't have a caption. As you can see, no caption, and what other window is safe to go to? I guess Spotify. It's still there. That is so, for example, I can go to a different window, see info that I want. Like, for example, I switch to Spotify and I want to track the name of this track. Boom, and I did that. Cool. All right, then we make the background dark. I think I grabbed that color from somewhere on VS Code. I don't remember where, but I think that's the case. Then I set font Q5. I don't actually remember what it's for. I think it's a recommendation from the docs for better compatibility. You can check out the method setFont in the GUI object page to learn more about it, but you don't really have to use it, I don't think. Then I set the color and the font. Pretty simple stuff. Now I add an edit box. This is an important thing. This removes the outer border it would otherwise have. So let's look at this again. As you can see, since there's no caption, there are also no small thing around it. Let me show you that better. See, now it has this small white border around the GUI. This doesn't, and an edit box would have a border around it as well. This option removes it. Let me show you. Nope. What am I doing? Oh, I had caps lock on. Oh, right. I had a hotkey for what I was trying to show you. Now it's just a runner entry. Okay, haven't used it in a while. As you can see, this input box has a border around it. I disabled it so it looks nicer. So I start typing from the center, and these are the size that I feel like looks the best. We take the handle, the WinTitle ID of the window to use later. Technically, we don't have to. We could just use this always rather than saving it to a variable, but I find that if you save an ID to a variable, it can make things easier to work with. Say the GUI disappears, or maybe you closed it but it's not destroyed for whatever reason, and you try to get the handle using the object, well, the object doesn't exist anymore. But if you got the ID, the window might still exist, while the object doesn't. So it's not necessary, but can sometimes be useful. We'll go back to destruction a bit later, or almost now. Now, this is the main reason we need the ID at all. We make the hotkeys only work while this window is active. So, escape, so right now it's the active window. I activate VS Code again, I press escape, and it still closes. Now you could make it so if it's active specifically, it will close it, but this is what I chose. It doesn't really matter. So when we press escape, we do destruction. All right, and then if the window is active, then we do destruction binding true. What does that mean? I agree, that's not particularly readable, and you could reformat this to be easier to read code. But here is what it is. Destruction. For hotkeys, they pass a parameter whether or not you want it. And it's the parameter of this hotkey. So we press escape, this hotkey will become escape. We press enter, and this hotkey is enter. I am not gonna use that, so I have a different parameter, and this is why when I bind, I skip one and only set the second parameter. That's how it works with bind to function objects that pass automatic parameters. I explain function objects a bit more in depth on my main channel in my video on function objects. I recommend you check it out because there are a lot in this feature. Okay, should continue is by default false. First we minimize, so say I press enter after typing something in. First it's minimized, so the previous window is activated instead. Then, if we should continue, with escape we don't, we run the function that we'll see later and pass the value that I typed in. This is key for what we actually want. Then after this function is ran, the GUI window is destroyed and all the hotkeys are disabled as well. But you don't have to worry because say I type something in, and while this window still exists but it's not active, it's not gonna take over escape or enter because the thread is occupied. All right. Now the GUI window is shown once again with random absolute parameters for the size, simply because it looks the way I want it to. It's up to you to decide for that. Now, runner and close. The main juice of the runner function. We pass what we typed in into this function. If I didn't type in anything, so say there's nothing here currently, I press enter and nothing happens because this stops it. Now a static map. This is how I do it, but you could instead have a switch. I'll elaborate on what I mean right now. How this works. This is a map. It has the name of I guess, the function you want to execute, and a function object. So let's try out something safe. So I type in string length. As you can see, it's here, and it evaluates the function object of this. Okay. Boom. 34. Okay. If you don't have function objects, say you just have this, what will happen is the first time you run the function, every single function will be executed, and it's going to be a mess. So that's why we have to have function objects that don't do anything by themselves. Now, what we do later is we actually call those functions. So we take the value, it was string length, it is passed into the map, so the value of string length, which is this function object, we take that function object and we call it. Perfect. Now, what happens if we try to call the value of a key that doesn't exist? We get an error, and that's amazing for the next part of the probably even more useful part of the runner that I implemented. Since we get an error, we can try calling the value from here and catch an error if it exists. Now this is even cooler, because we once again take the value, we reject some things out, and here's another map. To explain how this works a bit more, I can set a flag. This right now is a flag. So there's O and then a space. And then anything that I type in after is the new value. So with the flag, I decide what to do, and with the input, I decide what to pass into what to do. And here it is. So it was this line, the flag of O and the input of GHM, and then whatever else it actually does. That's up to you to decide how the input is handled and what does what. And here's how it calls it. We take the first group, which is the flag, and we call the value of that key, passing the value. So the thing that we type in after the first space. And here's that parameter, then that then gets used in some other place. The big part of an improvement I made once is making this map static. Instead of having to, like, say there's no parameters here. I guess that doesn't work anymore, huh? All right. Say there's no parameters here, and I just try to call the function using the results too. Because of that, we would have to reinitialize the map every time I try to use it. But since it's static, it evaluates to a function object to which we can pass a parameter. That is static. Once I call this once, this won't need to be created again, which is amazing. And then I just rejects out the parts and use them in my calling. Now, I know this is quite a lot, understandably so, but it hasn't always been this complicated way. Let's write an easier version of this. So Shift-Alt-M. First, we get an input box. Input. Boom. So if input, I think result is cancel, we do nothing. Okay. Now we make a switch statement for the input variable and do a couple of cases there. So case 1, we info 1. Hold on, there's some trick in Vim that I remember. Wait. Well, I don't remember it, I guess. There's some way to incrementally increment numbers, however stupid that sounds. Alright. That's it, essentially. That's where you can start out. I am terrible at speaking today. I guess that's what recording at 6 a.m. does to you. Here it is. We get the input box, and we can type something in. We type in 1, and nothing happens. I wonder why though. Because not input, but input value. True. Haven't used this method in a while. And here it is. 1, 2. This is not even close to the most efficient way. This is just for showing how you can make it work, because obviously you wouldn't specify every single number, but this could be some string, some word, maybe a few characters that do your function having passed some parameters. The reason why I don't use the switch statement is because how it works essentially is this true? Or rather, is this true? No, let's go forward. Is this true? No, let's go forward. Is this true? And that's fine for maybe like 10, but when you get so many possible keys, you really start noticing how slow it becomes. Because it has to go through all of these until it reaches, let's say, this. And it's even worse when I'm using regex, because it first needs to go through all of these and then also these. It's terrible. And that's why I use a static map, because once it exists, it doesn't need to be created again. Since I don't pass anything here, I already preset the parameters that I want. This like automatically only needs to be created once, and then that's all. The power of function objects. And this is the same thing, but I also add a parameter that I can pass. And yeah, that's it. This is a very powerful thing that you can create, because usually I realize that I broke the time continuum, because this is the next video that I will show you. In 3 days, you'll see the video where I make this. Essentially, for small stupid things like these, you don't really want to have a hotkey for them. First of all, you'll forget it, and second of all, maybe you use it once, I don't know, a week. Having a hotkey is not worth it. But if it's just something that you type in, First of all, you're gonna remember it pretty easily, and it won't bother your keyboard. Your keys are gonna stay free, which is really huge. Let's have a look. I have format table to array. Essentially, well, that's actually perfect. It formats like word per line into a single line where every word is inside of double quotes and have commas in between. Essentially, I have a list of a lot of things, and I can easily make them into an array. I really don't use it often. I don't remember the last time I did, but what's cool is that it's there. If I needed to, I could just use it, and I would probably remember the key for it as well. Remove comments. That's also something that I don't think I need, but I can just have it, and if the time comes where I do need it, well, it's going to be really easy to use it. Convert to JSON. This is for creating snippets more easily. String length, actually a thing that I use quite often. I showed it off to you already as example. It checks how many symbols there are in your selection. The way it does that is not necessarily pretty, but it works perfectly. It has never failed me. 507, huh? It doesn't look like that. And there's a lot of stuff that I would otherwise either have to just not make or create hotkeys for that I would absolutely forget. So you can use this idea to create a runner of your own and let yourself create more stupid, ridiculous shit that you might or might not use. Because now you don't have to make space for it on your keyboard, you can just remember what it's called and have more fun programming. Alright, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in 3 days where I make something ridiculous.